Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast, where we talk about everything dog. Q&As with veterinarian professionals, rescue operators, everyday topics. We cover everything dog on this podcast. So make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure you're following us on social media on both Instagram and Facebook. Thanks again for listening. Now here's that next episode. Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast. This is your host, Brittany, and we are joined today by Annie. Annie is going to talk to us about double merles. So thank you so much, Annie, for joining us.
Hi, hey, yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about it.
So tell us a little bit about your dog and kind of how this topic came up with a double merle.
Well, you and I, we were connecting and the topic came up, dogs, that kind of thing. And I was talking about how my dog, she's my special girl. That's what I kind of call her. And it
Yeah.
kind of prompted this conversation about what she is. And it's called double merle. And it comes with some defects and some disabilities that dogs can have. And I really didn't know anything about it until I adopted her. I got her from a humane society when she was about 6 months old. Her and her sisters were surrendered, and she had visible eye defects. And so I applied and I got her, and I've had her ever since. Her name's Aspen, and she's an Australian Shepherd. I don't know if I mentioned that. And she will be 7 this year.
Okay. And so when you say like visibly, you could tell there was something different about her, what did you notice immediately?
Yeah, so she's got 2 different conditions in her eyes. And so in her left eye, she's got a condition. It's called corectopia. And then in her right eye, she's got a condition called microphthalmia. I don't know about the pronunciation on that, so I apologize. And so the post when I, applied to adopt her said, we don't know, we're unsure of what her vision is going to look like. And so, I got her into my vet, and they said it seems like she's doing fine. If it comes down to it, she might have to have it, taken out one day, but, until it starts bothering her, don't worry about it. So after that, we kind of noticed, so she can't really see peripherals, and she can chase a ball and things like that, but she's a little delayed in doing it. And so to expand a little bit on those 2 different conditions. So the corectopia is where the pupil is usually a little bit, it's off-centered. It's not in the correct spot. And so hers actually sits at the very bottom. You can see her pupil at the bottom, and it's black, and it's got a little bit of the starburst pattern. I think that's what they call it with double merles. So it does a starburst little action, and then the rest of her iris is blue. And so you can see that clearly. Her full eyeball is visible. But then in her other eye, the microphthalmia, it is almost, if you think of like your eyelid, it covers it's actually like a cartilage from what I understand. And it covers most of her eye open, like the opening on her eye. And so she, like I said, she sees out of both eyes, but there's definitely a delay in it. And so that's immediately right off the bat what we kind of, what I can see visually from. But regardless, I didn't know much about it. I would learn much more after getting her. But she was sweet looking, and I was looking for a female dog, and I wanted to adopt one, and she fit the bill.
Yeah. And so whenever you kind of discovered, oh, she's a double merle, what did you kind of find that to mean? Or what did you start to learn about that in addition to the conditions of her eyes?
So the funny thing about double merles, much like a lot of medical conditions for humans and dogs, the extent is kind of unknown. There can be a range of different issues with double merle dogs, but it's, she's got a lot of sensory issues, I found out. We just recently put her on anxiety medicine to see whether that would help. But her sensory issues, it's the funniest thing, but it's also like, my heart breaks for her because I want to do everything I can.
Right.
I just don't understand it completely. I want to make her feel as comfortable as I can. And so like the sound of like an air compressor turning on, like, I don't know, like with a nail gun or something like that, she immediately is like running to hide, and like she'll shake
Mm-hmm.
really bad. And so there's definitely some behavioral tweaks that I have noticed about her. And that's really what is kind of like the underlying, what you don't see about double Merles, is because there can be a lot of anxiety driven behaviors. And if that's triggered by maybe, the genetic mutation in it or whatever it may be, who
Mm-hmm.
knows? And
Right.
so, unfortunately, it's not like I have a research facility around me to say, hey, tell me more about my dog and like maybe why she acts, the way that she does. But, we adjust to her lifestyle a lot. So,
Mm-hmm.
and, it pairs. I have a very reactive, her older brother is a very reactive German Shepherd. So bless her heart. But between the two of them, I definitely have my hands full.
Right. Yeah. And I think, a lot of people, they either don't know what a double merle is, or they just think, oh, it's lighter colored fur, which isn't always true. Or I know a lot of people who just assume immediately, like, oh, they're blind, which also not always true.
Yep.
And so, you mentioned conditions with the eyes, you mentioned some sensory issues, anxiety issues. Has your vet or anyone else kind of made you aware of like any other risks or associations that you need to know about with a double merle?
So funny enough, my vet doesn't really. I think I went into my vet kind of saying I educated myself on it.
Uh-huh.
They don't really mention it at a lot of, appointments. They don't advise me a lot, and I just don't know whether it's because they don't have a lot of experience with it or what. But yeah, I just sorry, rerouting to like because you can also see the color change on her too. And a lot of people say that double merle dogs, like you said, are always blind. And so it just like there's such a range of things that can happen when you breed two merle dogs together, and
Right.
irresponsible breeding or sometimes accidental breeding, right? And so,
Yeah.
and her litter was, I believe, an accident because she was surrendered with three of her sisters, and none of them were double merle bred. They all had the merle pattern, and
Oh,
she was
wow.
the
Okay.
only one with the white pattern on her. A lot of double merles also have hearing issues. I don't know whether hers is just being hard headed or whether it is genuine hearing issues, but we've never had like a lot of issues with her hearing. Um, but yeah, I mean, our vet, I don't know whether I've ever asked maybe the right questions either. So I don't want to always put it, on my vet to see, inform me of more. I think I'm also just really research driven where I do a lot of my
Hmm.
own looking. Like, I love, like, I wanted to learn more. And I also wanted to say, hey, is this attributed to a double merle? Like, have other owners seen the same kind of behaviors in their double merle dogs kind of thing?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a lot like us going to the doctor and we go to our just general MD, but we
Yep.
have a specific issue or something autoimmune or something that's kind of a mystery. And we try to ask, and they're like, I don't know. They truly just don't know. It's not that they
No.
don't care, they're just not trained in it. And there's so many things that could happen, even if you were to
Yeah.
narrow in on one condition. So I think it's very similar for double Merles. So you mentioned a little bit ago, you guys kind of adjust your lifestyle to fit her, which I think people really need to understand. You have to do that with most dogs, whether
Mhm.
you get the dog from a breeder, a shelter, a rescue. I'd say 99% of the time, you're going to adapt to fit their life. They're probably not going to adapt to fit yours. Now, you can train them, you can kind of get them to
Yep.
mold, but at the same time, like, you're kind of adapting for them to make them have like the best life possible. So, what are some changes or some things you guys have done to try to make her more comfortable or just like feel better in your house?
So, it is hard because I always thought that, like, after having my German Shepherd, who I'd had longer and who was very reactive, I was like, I'll try. She had started to display some of those anxious behaviors, and we were like, okay, maybe it's just lack of exposure, right?
Hmm.
And so we tried bringing her out to like dog friendly bars or dog friendly restaurants with friends. And then it just kind of proved to, the loud environment was definitely not what she wanted to be around. And
Right.
she was, shivering under a chair. I'm not going to let
Hmm.
my dog stay like that. So, we left.
Mhm.
And so I think maybe I tried it one or two other times in a much more subtle environment, and it still was just, it wasn't her groove. And I was
Mhm.
like, okay, fair enough. So I was like, okay, now I've got two dogs that I can't bring out and socialize anywhere.
Yeah.
Um, and so I have had to work with, our pet sitter. So I only have one pet sitter who can take care of
Mhm.
both of my dogs. I'm very lucky to have my parents too. We adjust, in the house as far as just if I know that like we're going to be doing something with an air compressor, whether it be blowing up a tire in the lawnmower
Mhm.
or something like that, to kind of try to prepare her. And, I do have medicine for her. What is it? Trazodone, I think that's what it
Yeah,
is.
trazodone.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, like a 4th of July, we gave that to her. And, like, those
Right.
are, like, unfortunately, it is medicine. And we're
Mhm.
trying anxiety medicines out to say, hey, what can I do to help you? I mean, if it's proven to work in dogs, why not try it with my dog? And if it can improve her life, then yeah, okay. But just overall, like, we're just really conscious of like what is around her, noise, sensory kind of things, and I think that's the way that we adjust the most.
Mhm.
She gets brought around people that she builds a comfort to, and so that's mostly what we do, I would say, just adjusting with her. My other dog is a much larger story, but for her, yeah, that's what we do for her.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. I think, some people just force their dog to be in these uncomfortable situations, and your dog doesn't have to be in that uncomfortable situation. You can pivot. They can have their own room. They could be in a kennel if they have to be medicated. Like if that's something you and your vet decided, then hey, that's a good route if that's keeping your dog safe and keeping them, healthy and happy. So how does she interact with your I don't want to call him aggressive. That's not the right word.
No, it is.
He
It is. He's,
Okay,
well,
we'll call him aggressive.
reactive
Reactive. Yes.
aggressive. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying with the aggressive term. Reactive is a much better term.
Yeah.
And I wanted to pivot right back real quick. So another change that we recently made is, and I just thought about this and it kind of
Uh-huh.
has to tie in with him. So she was really weird about dry food, and like we would feed dry and wet food. And she was having a difficult time like chewing it. And I was like, okay,
Hmm.
so now we started homemaking dog food.
Yeah.
We peel sweet potatoes, carrots, ground turkey, green beans, rice, and put it all together. And she's done much better with that and gained some weight on it. But just pivoting back, you said, how does she, with my other dog, like how are they?
Hmm. Right.
So when I first got her, I knew that my dog was reactive to male dogs and bigger dogs. And I knew
Hmm.
that when I was adopting a dog, I needed to get a female dog and one that was smaller than him. And so when they first met, it was, I was hesitant, obviously. It's like, how is this
Right.
going to happen? And he was muzzled, and they immediately took to each other. And I mean, they were on it. And seeing their bond form over the years that they've had together, I mean, it's been 6.5 years, 6 years.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes they fight like brother and sister, and they
Right.
work it out. But he has taught her a lot as far as playing fetch and playing tug of war and some of those skills that she might not necessarily have had,
Hmm.
because she's not exposed to, dog parks and other kinds of things. But they get along like two peas in a pod. I'm very, very thankful for it. They get along with my parents' dog, who's a little small, like corgi looking girl dog. And so the three of them together, I'm blessed to have the ability to have all three of them together. And just the two of mine too.
I think that's a great testament too to having a reactive dog. A lot of people have a reactive dog and they're like, I'm not going to get another dog. I'm not going to try this out. And even it might not be safe. It's not for everyone, but I think that's good to know that not only did it work, but it worked well.
Yeah, I mean, adjusting lifestyles as far as with a reactive dog and with her, who's a jumper as much as we try, I can only try to train her so much. If it's not being understood, then it's not being understood, and I don't know.
Hmm.
Um, we took our shed out back and we converted it. We put laminate floors, an AC unit. We paneled the walls. There's a TV. There's cameras in it, and so like when we have guests come and stay with us, that's where our dogs go.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, we remove them from the stimuli and they're removed from the situation, but they're still in a safe and loving environment. And so, we've adjusted a lot for them, but, I wouldn't change it. Yeah, I know that it's been hard, but it's been rewarding, and it's been such a learning lesson. I mean, I've never had as much patience as I have had than when I've had her. I had a
Right.
lab. My very first dog on my own was a lab, and she was, when you think about a perfect dog, she was
Yeah.
the perfect dog.
Hmm.
If she's ever. And then going into this, it was, okay, we're learning a lot of lessons here. And,
Right.
but yeah, they're my babies. I'm staring at them. They're chewing on bones now.
Well, we appreciate you coming on and talking to us about, your double Merle, a little bit about your reactive dog, which that could be a whole conversation in of
Oh,
itself
I
because I
know.
have
And
a reactive dog.
I'm so sorry to get sidetracked. I know this is about double Merles, and I hope I've spoke enough about them too.
Yeah, but we really appreciate it. And I just love to hear from other pet parents who are, out there rescuing dogs and giving their dogs the best life. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Anytime you want to talk about anything dog related, you can always call me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Canine Culture Podcast. Please make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure you're following us on social media. If you have any recommendations, any topics that you'd like to hear, if you know of any guests that would be good for the show, or if you yourself want to be a guest, please reach out to us. Send us an email at canineculturepodcast@gmail.com, or send us a direct message on social media. Thank you for listening, and please share this with any of your dog-loving friends.